Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Molten Music Technology. Today we're having a deeper look at the Donner L1. The Donner L1 Essential synthesizer is based upon, largely, the Roland SH101, which is a legendary, classic, monophonic analog synthesizer. The L1 follows that design with the slider layout and all the way down to the nature of the electronics inside. It has this brilliant sound, a very leady sound, the sort of sound that can penetrate through a mix, that can make a track. But it always had one difficulty, and that is that there's no way to save patches. You can't just scroll through presets and go, oh, sound after sound after sound. No, you have to build each one from scratch, and that could be tricky, particularly if you're not a seasoned synthesizerist. So the question is, how do you go from like a basic bleep into something more exciting like that? Well, let me show you. So this video is going to be showing you a whole bunch of different patches, taking you through from a basic position of sound through to more complicated, more interesting, more dramatic perhaps sounds that you can use and build upon and play upon and move off from. I mean, this one I just happened to come up with right now, and I really quite like it, so I'd like to keep this patch. How the heck do I do that? Well, I do that through the magic of the patch sheet. Yeah, this is old school. This is how we used to do it back in the day before you had computerized synthesizers that recorded and remembered everything that you did. Before that, you had to write it down, and so that's what I've got here. Now, I've produced this sheet myself because I couldn't find any anywhere else, and it's available to download through a link in the description, so you can download this yourself and create your own patches. Well, how do you actually do that? Well, you do it simply by writing on here. I'm going to show you how, because I'm going to record by writing this patch onto this piece of paper, and then after that I will take you through a whole bunch of other ones. I've got a load here. See, look, there's that one, and that one that I've been working on for the last couple of days, which I thought I would share. And then you can use them as a jumping off point for your own experimentations and explorations of the sonic possibilities of the Donner Essential L1. So here we are, a nice top-down view and an occasional view from the side. I'd just like to point out this little fella here. This is the Donner Versa Yellowfall 2. It's a reverb and delay in one pedal. Now, the L1 doesn't come with any effects at all, and so having some kind of effect to run through is extremely useful for a synthesizer like this. It has some reverb, so you can hear there, and this delay. So I'll be turning that on and off depending on the patch, and I'll do it, you know, I'll probably leave a little bit of reverb on all the time because it just sounds nice, and I'll add the delay from time to time depending on what we're doing. So let's record this patch. I've got my blank piece of paper right here. Now this is, as you can see, it's 2 on a piece of paper, so don't get confused. It's not some different sort of synthesizer. There, you see, like that. So what I'm going to do is write on what everything is on. Now, some things you won't necessarily need to write down because they're not in use, but you know, it depends on how you go. So I'm not using any glide, so I'm not going to write that in. Is the LFO important? Yes, it is. So I'm going to mark on here just about where that is, and also what it's on. It's on random. Pitch mod, no. The range, not so important, but I'm going to stick that in anyway. Pitch mod, no. Pulse width, somewhere in the middle, and this is on LFO, so I'm going to mark that there. You see how all these lines go down? It mirrors very much which is on the front panel itself. Then a sub, yeah, I've got a sub in, and I'm on -1 top there. Sub is somewhere in the middle, about there. I seem to have all three. Waveforms up, noise is down, external in is down. Over on the filter, over halfway on the frequency, and the resonance envelope all the way up. LFO down there somewhere, keyboard down there. Then fast attack, quick decay, a little bit of sustain, long release on envelope 1 and envelope 2. Going down like that, and it's on envelope 2. So that is more or less it. I have recorded that patch. What should we call it? I'm going to call it Thunder Squidge, for want of a better term. Squidge. How am I spelling that, do you think? Squidge. Awesome. If I come up with another one during the day, I'll stick it down there. So just to point out the main difference it has from the Roland SH101 is the second envelope. You've got an envelope from the filter and an envelope for the VCA. So the sound can run and shape itself differently to the filter. And that makes the L1 actually sound quite different. So the sound we've got here at the moment is a very good example of that, because the filter is doing something very different to the sound as a whole. However, all you can really deal with is the synthesizer that's in front of you, and that's what we're going to do. So let's start at the very beginning. So just to say that all of these patch sheets are available to download. They're on the website. You can go and have a look at them, and you can try them out for yourself. So you don't need to pause the video to see exactly what's going on. But if you find that helpful, that's also helpful. So going forward, I won't show you these. It's just that I'm using them as my guide. So what you want to do is start off. The first thing you have to do with the L1 is get a basic sound. So to do that, what I suggest is that you pull everything down. Down, all of the sliders. Don't worry about the switches for the moment, just the sliders that we're interested in. So at that point, you should get nothing. So in order to get your basic sound, stick up the sawtooth, because I find that the most interesting. Stick up the filter cutoff, that has to be up. If the filter cutoff is all the way down, it's going to be closed and not letting anything through. So it needs to be all the way open. Starting to get a little tick coming through now. Then we need to go to envelope 2, which controls the volume of the sound, the VCA, the volume of the sound. We need to stick the decay up, and then we have a sound. So that is our basic L1 SH101 sawtooth sound. You can also see the shape over here on my scope. And the other thing you don't get on the Roland is velocity. This keyboard is velocity sensitive, so the harder I hit it, the louder the sound. So that's our basic sound. From there we want to go to something slightly more interesting. So the first patch I've got for you is just simply called Res Lead, which is very similar. So what I will do, I'm going to stick on an arpeggiator, and then I'll slowly make the changes, and so you can see what happens. So arpeggiator, hold, put on something vaguely interesting. So I'm going to bring in a bit of sub. Going to bring the frequency of the filter down a little bit, put the resonance up, then put up the envelope to start affecting the filter. And I'm going to bring up the keyboard. So this affects how the filter tracks across the keyboard. As I turn that up, the filter is being opened as I go higher up the keyboard, making it slightly brighter, so you don't find yourself sort of down in the filter all the time. It's always being brought up, and then you have better control over it here. Also going to introduce some sustain to the envelope over here to give it a little bit more when I play it. And I'm then going to increase the decay on envelope 1, which is affecting the filter. So what we have is a rather nice little resonant sawtooth line. Super. Now come everything back down again, put in our basic sound and go to the next patch. Next patch I'm calling PWM Basil. I'm not entirely sure why, but let's see what this is about. Now we're going to be using a little bit of modulation here. We're going to make sure that's on the triangle modulator waveform. Going to bring the rate up a little bit. That's okay. Going to go pulse width modulation to the top and put that to the LFO here, which that is. Not using the sub this time. I'm going to go to the square wave. I'm going to put the frequency halfway up, resonance all the way down, envelope near the top, LFO down, keyboard up a little bit. A little bit of decay to give the filter something to do, and a little bit of stuff here. Now what does that sound like? So what we're getting is a little bit of wobble on our pulse width modulation here. That's without it. And you can see it move on the scope. Without it, it's just a square wave. As with pretty much any patch, if you ride the filter, you'll find something interesting happening. But without any resonance at all, you get a really sort of wide, fat sound. Because as you bring in resonance, it tends to shave off the edge of that square wave into something squelchier, which is nice, but sometimes you want the boldness of that fat square wave. And that's very much the point, is that you want to develop whatever it is that you've put in there as a patch. You then need to start playing in order to push it into other places. Alright, let's bring everything down. Put that up, put that up, put up a bit of that. Back to our basic. Next patch. It's called Fat Wobble. I'm sure that'll become evident. So going from over here, we want still want the sine wave, triangle wave type modulator. Over here, I'm going to go for a slightly higher range. PWM mod all the way up again, and it on LFO. Here, 1 octave down sub. I'm going to bring the sub in. Going to bring in the square wave and the sawtooth. Now sometimes if you push these all the way to the top, you can get a little bit of overload depending on what you're doing, because you're combining waveforms. So just, you know, pulling those back a little bit is no bad idea. Frequency in the middle, resonance up a little bit, envelope up a bit more, some LFO. So we've got a lot of stuff going on, and keyboard there. A little bit of decay on the envelope for the filter, and then that somewhere in the middle. How does that sound? I think it needs a little bit of coming down, perhaps an octave. Cool, next one up. Okay, now for something a little bit different. So back to our basic. Let's set this up. So still on the sine wave modulator, bringing the rate right down. Range somewhere in the middle, nothing going on here. Just our sawtooth. Then we're going to do some interesting things with the resonance all the way up, the cut off a long way down, keyboard all the way up, LFO up a little bit. Then just a little bit of action here in our envelopes, mirroring each other rather, so more of a Roland idea. So this is called two-tone dissonance. Where you have these two sounds coming in, which is unusual because you have a monophonic synthesizer and yet it's creating these two tones. Now this suggests that I put on the arpeggiator, which I will do. So what we've got going on here is that the filter is actually self-oscillating. So I'm getting a sine wave out of the filter because the resonance is all the way up, and I'm using that alongside the sawtooth. And everything I'm adjusting has an impact on that. Nice. Next one is very simply an organ sound we're going for. So for this we want to be using our sine wave, a bit of sub, to give it some bite. We're going to go for audio rate on the LFO, not for reasons particularly, but just because I that's what I set it to. Is that even important? I don't know. Going to turn the range up to high, not using any of this. This is on there, these are down, that's all the way up. Bringing the keyboard up and just making a change over here. Okay, I've adjusted this one a little bit because I found it to be not exactly what I wanted. So what I've done is I've just pushed up the pitch modulation just a little bit, just a tiny bit. And that gives me more of the sound that I was after. Put up the sub a little bit further and I've brought that down to 2 octaves below, which I think gives it a fuller sound. Let's stick on a bit of a vintage delay. Something like that. Okay, next up we're going to go for something slightly more cinematic, perhaps you could say, or at least I'm going to try. So our waveform is still over here. Turn that off. Going to go up to here on this. This is again on the pitch modulation. Just want a tiny bit, coming down to 4 on the range. Nothing else going on. Sub on 1, halfway up, square wave down, sawtooth up, this down, 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 frequency and resonance up quite high, envelope in the middle, LFO quite high, keyboard just, you know, not too far, long attack, quite a long delay, low sustain, long release, and then the second envelope all the way over there. Okay, there's something else we need to do here, which is to change the nature of the envelopes, because every time you press another note, the envelope re-triggers, which means you can't sort of play legato, which is what we want with this one. So to change that, press menu, press envelope, envelope 1 re-trigger, off, envelope 2 re-trigger, off. And we also want to go down to put the LFO re-trigger to on. Alright, next one. I'm going to go for a square wave modulator this time. Put the LFO rate up a little bit more. Pitch mod all the way to the top. 8 range. Pitch modulation from the envelope in the middle. Pulse width modulation up. Manual on the pulse width modulation source. Going to go for a 2nd octave sub all the way up. These two, square wave and sawtooth, just pushed up a little bit. Those down. Frequency all the way down, not all the way down, down to about here. Resonance up about 3/4. Envelope all the way up. LFO up a little bit. Keyboard all the way up. A little bit of sustain just on the filter envelope. And we want this here on gate rather than envelope, so we're ignoring envelope 2. What's going to happen with that? Okay. So what I suggest here is you put on the arpeggiator and see what happens. It's really fun taking out bits of the arpeggiator with these buttons here to give you a little bit more rhythm. Lots of things you can play with here. Okay, let's go for something nice and clean and usable in any sort of situation. So we're going to use the square wave mostly, with a little bit of sawtooth behind it. Going to give that the LFO. Going to go back with something nice, so we're going to move that square wave about to give us that gooiness. Let's start with a low filter envelope, really pulling on it, and so with the keyboard. Then we want just a little bit of attack on the envelope. Lots of sustain. Back to be at envelope 2. So this would be your synthesizer solo. You got a good little range on the cutoff. And you got that gooiness behind of the LFO. Okay, next up we have square wave over here. Going to put on audio rate for reasons I can't remember at this stage. Going to put the glide onto auto. Put the speed about there. Pulse width modulation in the middle, again on the LFO. Going to have a halfway sub on 1 octave, all the way up on the square. Bring the noise in. Frequency down, resonance about halfway, envelope all the way up and keyboard all the way up. Fast attack, slow decay on the envelope, and then just sustain on envelope 2. That's super nice. That's probably my favourite, I think, so far. Okay, now for something a little bit more in the special effects department, we're going to put our glide on and all the way up, which is a bit crazy. Audio rate on this all the way up on the LFO, putting it back to our sine wave. Pitch mod all the way up, putting this up to the highest range. So the LFO is going to be throwing itself into the pitch, as you can already hear. Now along here it's going to be relatively simple. Just going to have our sine wave up and the filter up. That's it. What is going on here? Put this on gate. This is what I would call my Tardis sound. Waveform is just superb. And then what you want to play with is the LFO rate. You can also quickly turn this into some kind of data speak just by twisting the modulator to random. But I prefer the Tardis. Nice, right, back to where we were. Let's turn that off, bring the pitch mod back down, give ourselves our basic sound. Now this one is going to use the noise as the modulator, so all the way across to noise, which is going to be weird. Let's put the pitch up halfway, bring this down to about the 8-foot range. We're going to have an all the way up sub on the second octave. Our sawtooth still up. Going to have frequency and resonance with a little bit of fun going on. Envelope up, keyboard up a little bit. Then a little bit of decay and sustain, a little bit of release, sustain and release on the VCA. Back to envelope 2. Now the idea of this sound is that it feels like it's deteriorating through the noise that's being used as a modulator. So noise has been injected into the pitch. And that's causing this sort of radioactive sound. So to play with this, let's stick on the arpeggiator. Play with the filter. Yeah, nice. So I think we might be back full circle to our thunder squidge that we did earlier. So let's just put that one back in just to show that it can work, this recording of your patch. So I seem to be on random thing over here. LFO rate up, audio sync off, modular in the middle, that to the top on the LFO, this to 8, yeah. Sub halfway up, 1 octave sub, square wave up, that's up, and this up. Those two down, those in the to the top, envelope to the top, LFO in the middle, that down, a little bit of decay and sustain, lots of release, lots of decay, sustain, release, and there. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. These, as I say, are all going to be linked to a page where you can download all of these and use them yourself down in the description. So do go and check those out and make your own patches. Send them to me. I'd love to see them. That would be great. Now, the L1 synthesizer is available for you to come and play at the Synth Picnic in Norwich. If that's something that's near you or interests you, every month we're filling a room in Norwich full of synthesizers, and the L1 has pride of place there. You can come and play with it yourself. I'll even take the patch sheets along so you can go and try those out. Also, do go and check out my full review of the L1, which takes you through absolutely every aspect and gives you all the pros and cons about why this is a decent little synthesizer. Otherwise, please subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to know when I release more videos, because I'm doing videos on all sorts of things. Synthesizers, modular audio interfaces, software, computers, bits and pieces. Who knows, maybe even a pair of headphones. But in the meantime, go and make some tunes.